Hello, hello. Welcome to the Kinks and Beatles Daily Deep Dive. I'm your host, Tony Fry. This is episode 222, where we are discussing Gotta Be Free by the Kinks. This is the second attempt to record this podcast. If you were on our live stream a few moments ago, for some reason my audio channel just completely stopped responding to the broadcast software. So I could see what was going on, but I could tell that nobody could hear it, and some Roland in our chat room was confirming that you guys couldn't hear it. So this is take two. This is not live, so we're not going to have any chat on this, but I do encourage you all to swing by Hero Habit, the Facebook group, facebook.com/Hero Habit, and follow us. So you'll get updates, and you can actually, if you go into our events tab, you can see all the scheduled podcast recordings. We're doing it 5 nights a week on the weeknights, sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes in the evenings, kind of mixing it up to see what times get the most participants. And once you're there, you can watch this live. You can chime in with questions or comments or criticisms or whatever. And, of course, chat with other people who are fans of these two bands that you're a fan of. So anyway, we are talking about, like I said, Gotta Be Free by the Kinks, which was released November 27th, 1970 as the final track on Lola versus Power Man and the Money Go Round Part 1. And just right off the bat, I want to demonstrate for you the best part of this song. And since I screwed this up in the first recording, I guess this take two isn't the worst thing in the world. But this is, for me, the best part of the song. That little riff, I don't know if Ray came up with it or if Dave came up with it, but it's so simple and so effective. It's a cool little riff. There's nothing crazy. It's not complicated at all. It's not even particularly original. It's basically half of the blues riffs, or bass lines kind of follow that same pattern on the fretboard. But it's that little dun-dun-dun, that chromatic movement at the top that really makes it stand out. And I think that's a great hook on this song. And it breaks up these repetitive lines in the chorus, which are just revolving around a couple chords. This is not one of Ray's most chord-heavy songs. It doesn't need to be. But it's such a cool little lick. That to me, it just grabs my ear every single time. Very effective. If this track sounds familiar to you, it is, of course, because the first verse was used as the introduction to the Contenders, which opened the album. So what we have here is Got to Be Free is both the prelude of the entire album and then the conclusion of the album. And that's not something a lot of bands do. And it's kind of opposite of what the Beatles did on Pepper with the reprise. They tend to have the big song up front and then reprise it later. They did it with Pepper. They did it with You Never Give Me Your Money on Abbey Road. Paul did it with on Band on the Run. Oh, he goes through a couple songs. I forget at the end on the fade out of a song. So, it's not uncommon to do it that way, but to do it as a prelude and then wait an entire album before we actually hear what the song sounds like, that's kind of an unusual trick, but it's cool on this. I like it. The whole song is kind of revolves around the choruses. All right, there are verses. It's verse, chorus. There are verses, but it's the focus is on the chorus. That's where all the hooks are melodically, and there are different words on different choruses throughout the song. And because of that, it actually kind of functions as a chorus and a verse, because the verse is supposed to progress the narrative of the song, while the chorus is like that repeated refrain that our ear grabs onto, that we focus on, that we sing along to. And when you change the words to the chorus, we're grabbing onto that melody, but you're changing the words, so it's also progressing the narrative of the song in a way. And the way Ray does it is every verse, no matter what the words are, every verse opens with Gotta Be Free to, and then he lists off the the things you got to be free to do, right? So in that way, he maintains a chorus feel because you have something to grab onto. You have that first line of the chorus to grab onto. But because he changes that list every time, like I said, it also kind of functions as a verse and adds a different meaning to the song every time he gets to it. The lyrics that are most relevant to the concept of this album come in the first and the final chorus, where he sings, "Got to be free to say what I want, make what I want, and play what I want." Again, Ray is being incredibly critical about the music industry. This entire album is a critique of the music industry from both Ray and Dave. We talked about Rats a couple days ago, which kind of expressed Dave's disillusionment with the industry. This whole album focuses on what a horrible business they are in. As a business, as a vocation, what's better than writing music and recording and playing in front of people and stuff like that? But the business side of it is horrible. But they hide it in such a sing-songy, happy-go-lucky way, whether it's like an old vaudeville song like we have in the Money Go Round, or whether it's in a rocker like Rats, or like a bluegrass country kind of song like this. It almost disguises the fact that they are being critical, that the lyrics are being scathing and sardonic. It's good songwriting is what it is. As the closing track, this continues a great trend with the Kinks. And I don't think we've talked about this before. I mean, I talked about it 10 minutes ago, the first time I recorded this episode. But we haven't talked about it together. You haven't heard me talk about it. How good this band is at closing albums. Right? And this track closes an album, so it's a continuation of the streak. But if you look at it, the album right before this, Arthur, closed with Arthur. Great song. Title track. No, most bands don't close with the title track, but this is a great album closer. Before that, with Village Green, they closed with People Take Pictures of Each Other. Great album closer. Something Else closed with Waterloo Sunset, which is arguably the greatest song Ray Davies ever wrote, and they put it as the album closer. Great album closer. After this, they're going to close Muswell Hillbillies with Celluloid Heroes. I mean, they do a good job at ending an album. They knew how to close out a collection. And nowadays, that's kind of a lost art because the sequencing of an album isn't as important anymore. Right now, more than ever, an album is just a release of a collection of songs. People buy them or stream them individually, and they don't really focus and sit down and actively listen to music or an album from start to finish. Right? Music has become a very passive noise instead of an active experience. So because of that, the sequencing of an album isn't as important. And bands like the Beatles and the Kinks and Pink Floyd and Zeppelin, who put so much care into sequencing their albums, are kind of at a disservice now because so many people that are new to this music aren't listening to it in the way that it was intended to be presented. And you don't have to worry about flipping the album, so you don't need to have a song at the end of side A that is so good that you want to flip the album, but not as good as the opening track, because that should be one of your best ones, and your closing track can be the weirder one, like Tomorrow Never Knows or something, or the one that ties it all together, like Got to Be Free here, and make you go back to side A and start all over. Right, that's a lost art, but the Kinks were masters of it, and I can't think of an album that they've released that I would change the sequencing on. They were really solid at presenting their music in a way that flowed and kept you interested for the 25, 30, 40 minutes that album persisted. There's not a lot I can say about this track. It's sort of short and simple, but it is a great little song. I love how it bookends the album. It's a little bit odd because I can't hear this track as a standalone track in the middle of the album. Right? If this was track 4, I don't think I would like it as much. But as a prelude and an album closer, it's pretty much perfect. So since I don't have much to say, I think this would be the time that I would go to the comment section. And in this comment, in the first attempt, this is about where I lost my audio last time. Our good friend Roland, who's been a longtime supporter of the podcast and who has been active in the chat a couple times in this first week of live broadcasts, mentioned Mick Avery's drumming on this track. Of course, it goes without saying, but I still manage to say it in every episode. Mick Avery's drumming is very good in this. And then he asked me if I own this on vinyl. I don't believe I do. He mentioned how it's hard to find in good condition. I've had that experience, and when I buy a record, I kind of want the cover to be in good condition as well, not just the vinyl. And the one time I found a decent version on vinyl, the cover was just shredded to bits. It was in horrible condition and was like $45, and I wasn't about to spend $45 on such a trashed product. So no, I don't have this one on vinyl yet, but like I've mentioned before on this podcast, my collecting of vinyl kind of started within the last year or two, and as a budgetary constraint, I have kept it down to just collecting Kinks and Beatles related stuff for now. Otherwise, I'll spend thousands of dollars on every band I like. I'm going to get every 45 and all that. So this one is on the list. I'm also going to go to some voicemails, because we get voicemails from time to time, and it's been a while since I played them. So we're going to do a couple voicemails today. And if you'd like to leave me a voicemail, all that information will be at the end of this episode. So stay tuned.
Listen there, Tony. Love what you do with the Kinks and Beatles podcast there. I've been a huge listener for a couple years here now. Listen, I can't find Shangri-La up in the podcast there, so maybe I'm not searching right, but you should be breaking down that one. So go ahead and load up Shangri-La. I can't find it here. I'm on the Spotify over here, and it just doesn't, it's not really popping up. So, yeah, if you can go ahead and do that for me, that would be great. Anyways, great podcast. You're good at what you do. Thanks for everything. I donated this month. I'm going to do it next month, and we'll talk to you then. Peace.
All right, so thank you for that voicemail. I don't think you left your name. If you did, I totally missed it. But thank you for calling in. Thank you for contributing to the podcast. Your Spotify search was working exactly as it should, because there is nothing to find. I haven't covered Shangri-La yet. When I started this podcast, the tracks were pulled completely at random. It went every other day, and I pulled a random track, and so Shangri-La just hadn't come up in the mix yet. Since we've come back from the hiatus, we're doing it by album. So obviously today we're finishing the Lola album. So once we get to that album, we will definitely get to Shangri-La. I'm going to try to keep this podcast going until we are out of songs, and that's going to be a long time from now. Thank you again for contributing. When we do some premium events, which we're going to start doing in March, which are going to be Facebook Live events that are going to be a little bit off topic. It's not going to be about a song. It'll be about a broader topic related to one of the two bands. Those will be a pay to participate event. People who contribute to the podcast via the Hero Habit website will get a free pass to those. So make sure you check your emails in March, and you'll get the passcode or whatever you want to call it to get into those events. All right, we have another voicemail from Chris in New York.
Hey, Tony, huge fan of the show. Just discovered it a few weeks ago and been blowing through it. I'm a big Kinks and Beatles fan, loving every episode. Just wanted to talk about Hey Bulldog. I was hoping you'd discuss its similarity to the riff from Carl Perkins's Lion in the Jungle. And I'm sure it wasn't an accident, or maybe it was. It happens all the time. But anyway, love the show. Love Hey Bulldog. Love the Kinks. Love the Beatles. Love your work. Keep rocking. This is Chris from New York, and I appreciate what you do. Take care.
Chris has actually called a couple times, and I'm going to save the other voicemails for other episodes because one of them is about a song we haven't covered, so I'll use his voicemail then. As for the similarities between Hey Bulldog and the Carl Perkins tune A Lion in the Jungle, I'm not sure, Chris, who you think copied who. Wasn't real clear in the voicemail. The track is from an album, for those of you who don't know, called On Top, which Perkins released in 1969. And it was kind of a comeback album for him. And so since it was 1969, it was after Hey Bulldog. So the Beatles would have been first on that one. I suppose it's possible that Perkins was inspired to add the riff from Bulldog. But like I said in the Hey Bulldog podcast, it's a pretty low-hanging fruit since it's just a blues scale. And I'll play that for you. God, I hit my guitar every time I picked it up. Whoops. The blues scale is just... So it's just the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes of the blues scale. So it's not a terribly uncommon style of riff. You're going to hear those first few 5 notes of that scale in a lot of riffs. It just so happens that, Perkins put it on a kind of a big album around the time of the Beatles basing an entire song around it. And I was just watching a TV show from the 90s, and they use an almost identical riff as interstitial between scenes. And that was 30 years later. So here's the thing, though. Carl Perkins didn't actually write that song. It was written by Ronnie Self, who had been around for years by that point. And I can't find a version of him singing it. It is referenced in some places as a cover, but I can't find any reference of Ronnie Self actually releasing a version of it. So my guess, and I would have to do more digging, I guess. My guess is that Ronnie Self actually wrote it for Carl Perkins for this record. That said, I don't know if it was part of his arrangement and his demo of it, or if it was something that Perkins came up in the studio. But it is pretty much identical to Hey Bulldog. But it did come after. All right. So if you would like to get a hold of me, you can email me at kinksandbeats@herohabit.com. Call me and leave a voicemail at 925-494-1739. You can find us on all of the social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. We have a Hero Habit subreddit you can join. There's TikTok. We have a new TikTok account. There's Instagram. We are all over the place. And of course, if you're listening to this on the podcast feed, please swing by YouTube and find our channel there. And of course, you can go to herohabit.com and click the podcast button at the top of the page. And there you can be directed to a complete list of everything you need to know about this podcast, including all the episodes that we have released already, separated by albums. So it's even easier to search than the Spotify directory. So you can go there and just look at the albums and the highlighted ones we've covered, click it and listen to it. Simple as that. So please go ahead and do that. And find this video on YouTube, share it with all your friends, throw it in a Facebook group, about the Beatles or the Kinks, and get the word out there. All right. Thank you all for listening. I'm sorry again to the people in the live event who got cut short today. Join me tomorrow, and take care of yourselves. Be safe, everybody.